Monkey D. Garp is arguably the most tragically self-defeating character Oda has ever put on paper. I do not like this man, but at the same time I kinda do. A man with the power to reshape the world, who instead chose to be its most compliant watchdog. Everything about him is a contradiction, and it's definitely done on purpose. Garp's central paradox is devastatingly simple. He has full awareness of the rot inside the system he serves, and he stays anyway. He is not a hero, not a villain, and not a coward. He is the embodiment of what happens when a good man chooses the institution over the revolution, and then has to live with every consequence of that choice for the rest of his life. Oda has written hundreds of characters, but none of them carry the specific, unbearable weight that Monkey D. Garp does. He is the most contradictory figure in One Piece. A fist that could literally shatter mountains, but cannot break the chains he placed on himself. Here's the contradiction that defines Garp before any other. He is a lifelong Marine who openly despises the entity the Marines serve. Chapter 957 confirms it outright. Sengoku explains that Garp was offered the rank of Admiral multiple times throughout his career and refused every single time. The reason? Sengoku made it plain that admirals serve as direct subordinates to the Celestial Dragons. Garp doesn't want to protect them. He considers them scumbags, a word he uses to their faces, in front of royalty, without flinching. He laughed when Luffy punched a Celestial Dragon on Sabaody. He insulted Starry, the king of the Goa Kingdom, without knowing or caring who he was. He attacked Saturn during the God Valley incident, despite being warned by his own Marines that striking a member of the Five Elders would have consequences. And yet, he stayed. He didn't leave when Dragon left. He didn't defect when he saw the native hunting competition's corpses on God Valley. He didn't resign after Ohara. He didn't break ranks after they executed pregnant women searching for Roger's child. He put on the coat the next day, and the day after that, and every day for nearly 4 decades. Ask yourself, what does Garp believe staying accomplishes? The most charitable guess, and what I personally gravitate toward, is that Garp believes in reform from within. He sees the Marines as the closest thing the world has to organized protection for civilians, and he thinks leaving would mean abandoning ordinary people to the unchecked cruelty of both pirates and the world government. His worldview is captured in a single devastating line: even where there is social discrimination and political corruption, as long as there is no open bloodshed, he can call it peace. Dragon calls this what it is: oppression authorized by law. Garp solemnly agrees, and then he stays. The less charitable guess is simpler and harder to argue against. Garp is afraid, not of Emu, not of the Five Elders, but of the Void. If he leaves the Marines, he has to confront the fact that his entire life's work, every pirate he arrested, every order he followed, every compromise he made, was in service to a rotten institution. Leaving means admitting Dragon was right all along, and Garp, for all his physical courage, cannot bring himself to do that. The God Valley flashback chapters have reframed everything about the Monkey D family. Dragon wasn't always a revolutionary. He was a Marine. He served under the same institution as his father, likely inspired by the same ideals. And then he went to God Valley. What Dragon saw there, the native hunting competition, the celestial dragons hunting enslaved people for sport, the Marines ordered to protect the perpetrators, broke something in him permanently. Dragon rescued civilians at gunpoint, threatening his own Marine superiors to commandeer a ship for the survivors. He was imprisoned for insubordination. And here is where Garp's contradiction manifests into something unbearable. Garp gave Dragon the key to his cell. He let his son escape. He didn't argue with Dragon's disgust. He didn't try to convince him to stay. He just went back to work. Dragon saw the corruption and decided, burn it down from outside. Garp saw the same corruption, the same corpses, the same screaming civilians, the same monstrous celestial dragons, and decided, hold the line from inside. These are simply two different ideologies. They are fundamentally opposed theories about power, change, and moral responsibility. Dragon's position is radical but coherent. If the system produces atrocities by design, working within it makes you complicit. The only moral action is to destroy and rebuild. Garp's position is conservative, but also, in its own way, coherent. If you destroy the system, you get chaos, and chaos kills more people than corruption does. Someone has to stay and mitigate the damage from within, even if it means getting your hands dirty. The tragedy is that both positions have been tested across the story, and the narrative seems to lean toward Dragons. The Marines haven't reformed. Sakazuki is now Fleet Admiral. Ohara still happened. God Valley was still erased. Ace still died on an execution platform. Garp's holding the line has held nothing. Roger and Garp met in a jail cell in Chapter 551, with the most impossible request anyone has ever made of a Marine. He told his sworn enemy that he was going to have a child, that the world government would hunt down and kill any woman associated with Roger and murder the baby. And then he said, protect my child. Garp's immediate response was, "Absolutely preposterous." Roger smiled and said, "No, you'll do it. I know you will." And Roger was right, because Garp's moral code, the code that made him a Marine in the first place, wouldn't allow an innocent child to be killed for his father's sins. Unlike many Marines, Garp does not believe that a person's lineage determines their path. He protected Ace. He oversaw Rouge's pregnancy. He watched her die naming the boy. And then he took that baby, the son of the Pirate King, and placed him with Dodon, a mountain bandit he was supposed to arrest. Here's what makes this unbearable. Garp then spent years desperately trying to make both Ace and Luffy into Marines. He threw Luffy into bottomless pits, tied him to balloons, abandoned him in jungles at night, and beat both boys with the fist of love whenever they expressed any desire to be pirates. The question is, why? If Ace and Luffy were Marines, the system couldn't kill them for their bloodlines. A Marine Ace would never end up on an execution platform for being Roger's son. A Marine Luffy would never be targeted as Dragon's child. Garp was trying to hide them inside the machine. Garp couldn't accept that his grandsons would follow the same path as his son and his greatest rival. Making them Marines was Garp trying to rewrite a story that had already been written in their blood. And what if Garp knew the Marines were broken? He knew he alone couldn't fix them. What if making Ace and Luffy into Marines was Garp trying to stack the institution with people who share his moral compass? People who might, over a generation, transform the Marines into what he always wished they were. The tragedy, of course, is that it doesn't matter. Both grandsons rejected him. One died because of the system Garp serves. The other is dismantling it. Garp's entire project, raise good men inside the institution, failed catastrophically, and the failure cost him everything. Now dedicate a wall in your mind to 3 portraits, and hang them side by side. Dragon wants to destroy the system from outside. He saw the corruption, the slavery, the hunting competitions, the buster calls, and decided that the entire structure, from Imu to the lowest Marine who follows unjust orders, must be torn down and rebuilt. He left the Marines after God Valley, founded the Revolutionary Army, and became the world's most wanted man. Garp wants reform from within. He saw the same corruption and decided that the Marines, however flawed, are the only barrier between civilians and total chaos. Destroy the institution, and you get something worse. Stay inside, train good people, and maybe over generations, the institution becomes what it should be. Luffy ignores the system entirely and is just free. Luffy doesn't want to reform the Marines or destroy the world government. He wants to eat meat, protect his friends, and sail wherever the wind takes him. He doesn't engage with the system on its terms at all. And paradoxically, this makes him the greatest threat to it. Which approach works? The story's answer, chapter by chapter, has been brutal for Garp. Dragon's revolution is bearing fruit. Sabo rescued Kuma. The Revolutionary Army is actively challenging the Celestial Dragons, and nations at the Reverie began to question the world government's legitimacy. Luffy's freedom has inspired an entire generation. From Kobe to the Grand Fleet, both the Revolutionary and the Pirate have changed things. Garp's reform? The Marines are now led by Sakazuki, a man who embodies absolute justice, who would execute children for their bloodlines, who killed Ace with a fist through the chest. Sword operates in the shadows precisely because the official command structure is broken. The Seraphim program weaponizes children. CP0 carries out assassinations. Nothing Garp worked for from the inside has materialized. Oda does not portray Garp's middle path as noble pragmatism. It portrays it as tragic cowardice, because he lacks the moral courage to abandon a sinking ship. The narrative punishes him for it. He lost Ace. He lost Dragon. He lost Kuzan. He's imprisoned on a pirate island. The hero of the Marines title is a title of nothingness. God Valley was a massacre dressed up as a military victory. Garp's initial motivation wasn't even heroic in the traditional sense. He came to God Valley primarily because Roger was there, and Garp wanted to fight him. He was a young, hot-blooded vice admiral chasing his rival, but what he found on that island changed everything. He saw the corpses. Garp came across the victims of the native hunting competition and was shocked and disgusted. He called Sengoku, his closest ally, admitted he had heard rumors about the competition but had treated them as just that. Rumors. The institutional failure goes all the way up. Even the good Marines knew something was wrong and chose ignorance. Then Imu appeared. Through Saturn's body, Imu began attacking Marines and pirates alike. Garp saw the true power behind the world government. Not a council, not a bureaucracy, but a singular, ancient, godlike entity that could possess the 5 elders and transform people into demons. Despite being warned by his own soldiers that attacking one of the 5 elders would have consequences, Garp set his sights on Imu. In the final battle, Roger and Garp combined their attacks to defeat the demonized rocks, who was begging them through the voice of all things to kill him. And then the world government erased God Valley from history. The island was obliterated. The narrative was rewritten. Garp got his title, Hero of the Marines, for an event built on a genocide, awarded by the perpetrators of that genocide. Every single time someone calls him hero, it's a reminder. He knows what God Valley really was. He has seen the thing behind the curtain, and he went back to work on Monday. What does that silence cost a man psychologically? Garp follows what the manga calls it, my justice. It's a personal moral code, distinct from absolute justice or lazy justice. But my justice after God Valley is a justice that has seen the worst and chosen to look away. It's a justice that says, I know the truth, but I will not speak it, because speaking it would destroy the only institution I believe can protect people. Marineford was the hinge of Garp's character. Everything before Marineford is a prologue, basically. Everything after it is a consequence. Ace sits on the execution platform. Garp sits beside him. Garp says he doesn't pity Ace. He's a pirate, but then he says Ace is also family, and that puts him in conflict. He scolds Ace. Why didn't you just live as I told you to? And then this devastating line. If I could have done anything, I would have already done it. Sengoku warns Garp not to try anything. Garp responds that he already knows he can't. When Luffy charges toward the platform, Garp blocks his path, citing his marine duties. But he doesn't fight. He lets Luffy punch him. He falls. Sengoku can tell it's deliberate. Garp chose family over duty in the only way he could, by pretending to lose. But pretending to lose and saving Ace are two vastly different things. Garp is arguably the strongest marine alive. His strength literally rivals Roger's. Garp was capable of acting. He chose not to until it was too late. Some would argue Garp respected Ace's agency. Ace chose piracy, and Garp wouldn't override that choice. Others argue Garp was paralyzed. A man whose entire identity is built on being a marine cannot, in front of the entire world, betray that identity, even to save his grandson. After the war, Garp returned to Fuchsia Village, to Luffy's hometown, to the woman who raised his grandchildren. Daden saw him and hit him with a wooden bat. Makino stepped between them, saying, Garp could not save both Ace and Luffy even if he wanted to, and Garp is the one truly suffering. But Dadan, with tears streaming down her face, corrected her. The one truly suffering the most is Luffy. Garp didn't fight back. He didn't defend himself. He didn't explain. And to be honest, Garp came to that village seeking punishment. He wanted someone to call him out. He wanted the blows. The guilt was eating him alive, and the hero of the Marines title prevented him from self-destruction. So his alternative was to absorb the rage of the woman who loved Ace more honestly than he ever could. He was, for the first time in the story, silent. Later on, Kobe, Garp's student, not his blood, not his grandson, a boy he trained, is captured by the Blackbeard pirates and taken to Hachinozu. Garp disregards protocol entirely. He leads a sword rescue mission to a Yonko's island. He arrives by leveling an entire town with galaxy impact, so devastating it confirms beyond any remaining doubt the magnitude of power this man has been sitting on his entire life. He calls Kobe the future of the Marines. When Shiryu ambushes Kobe with an invisible blade, Garp throws himself in the way and takes the sword through his stomach. He keeps fighting. He battles Kuzan, his own former protege, and when the Marines' escape is threatened by Avalo Pizarro's island hand, Garp entrusts Kobe, Helmeppo, and Prince Grus with stopping it, calling them all the future of the Marines, and stays behind alone. He is captured, frozen by Kuzan, imprisoned on a pirate island. Here is the question that breaks him as a character open. What changed between Marineford and Hachinosu? At Marineford, Garp had more reason to act. Ace was blood. Well, not technically. Ace was the fulfillment of a promise to Roger. Ace was his grandson, and Garp didn't move. At Hachinosu, Kobe is a student, not family, not blood, a marine captain whom Garp trained, and Garp sacrificed everything. This is the key to his entire character. At Marineford, Garp was still trying to be a marine. He was still telling himself that the system would produce a just outcome, or at least that he couldn't be the one to break it. He was still choosing the institution. At Hachinosu, Garp chose a person. For the first time in his life, he put an individual human being above every institutional consideration. The lesson he teaches in the classroom, leave the old man, save the young marine and the baby, protect the future. He finally lived it. He made himself the old man on the island. Losing Ace was the lesson. It took him years to learn it. Garp is, by every measurable standard, one of the most powerful human beings in the One Piece world. He cornered Roger countless times. He fought Roger, Rox, Whitebeard, and even Imu. He destroyed 8 mountains in training just to prepare for a single fight. At 78 years old, he leveled an entire settlement with one punch. Cross Guild assigned him a bounty of 3 billion berries, Admiral level. No devil fruit, just his fists. And here is the contradiction that turns admiration into grief. The freest spirited man in the Navy is the most imprisoned by his own loyalty to it. Garp's weapon is himself, raw, unenhanced human power. It's the most honest power in One Piece, a story filled with devil fruits that transform reality, haki that bends wills, and ancient weapons that can erase islands. Garp's fist is just a fist, And the tragedy is that he never fully unleashes it because the institution dictates when and how he's allowed to fight. He could have challenged the five elders. He could have protected Ohara. He could have stopped Sakazuki. He could have broken Ace's chains. He had the power to do all of these things. But power without agency is just potential energy. Stored, wasted, eventually dissipated. Garp is the most powerless major character in One Piece, simply due to the fact that his strength is chained to a system that tells him who to hit and who to let die. Sword is the quiet confession Garp never made out loud. The unit is a Marine Headquarters secret special force composed of Marines who have formally resigned their positions. Members cannot be ordered by the Marine command structure, and in return, the Marines bear no responsibility for their actions. They operate outside the chain of command. They can attack an emperor without prior approval, something no regular Marine unit can do. Both of Garp's students, Kobe and Helmeppo, are Sword members. Ex-Drake, who infiltrated Kaido's crew for years, was Sword. Garp himself cooperated with Sword as a key player during the Hachinosu raid, operating under their rules rather than standard Marine protocol. Here is what Sword means, stripped of all military euphemism. If the Marine command structure worked, Sword would not need to exist. Sword exists because the official chain of command is compromised, because orders from above flow through the five elders, through the celestial dragons, through Imu, because a Marine who follows the official rules will inevitably be asked to do something unconscionable. Protect slavers, execute innocents, cover up genocide. Sword is the escape hatch, the back door, the acknowledgement built into the institutional architecture that the institution itself is corrupt. And Garp mentored, supported, and possibly founded this unit. Garp couldn't destroy the system. That's Dragon's job. He couldn't ignore it. That's Luffy's gift. But he could build a shadow structure within the Marines, a secret cadre of good people who operate by his justice rather than the world governments. Sword is Garp's decades-late acknowledgement that Dragon might have been right all along, that the system cannot be reformed through legitimate channels, that the only way to do good within the Marines is to technically no longer be part of them. After Ace's death, Garp doesn't defend himself. He absorbs every punch Dodon throws. He returns to the Marines as an instructor, a demotion in all but name. The recurring theme here is penance. Garp cannot atone through grand gestures because the hero title chains him to the institution. He can't self-destruct because too many people depend on his reputation to recruit new Marines. So he teaches. He trains the next generation. He builds what he couldn't be. Garp keeps mentoring young Marines, Kobe, Helmeppo, the Sword operatives. He pours himself into these relationships with an intensity that borders on obsession. So, is he building the next generation of good Marines? Or is he trying to create the version of himself that would have saved Ace? Every protege is a second chance. Every young Marine who learns Garp's My Justice, instead of Sakazuki's Absolute Justice, is a correction to the timeline. If Kobe becomes the man Garp wishes he'd been at Marineford, someone who chooses people over duty, then maybe, retroactively, Garp's life wasn't wasted. Maybe the pattern can be redeemed through a student, even if it can't be redeemed through the teacher. But before Kobe, we had Kuzan, Garp's former student, his protege, the man who once called him cool for refusing the admiral title, drives a massive icicle through Garp's chest on Hachinosu. The ice is the perfect metaphor. Garp's idealism, his belief in reform, his My Justice, all frozen in place. Unable to move, unable to change, unable to thaw, Kuzan left the Marines because he saw what Garp refused to see, that the institution couldn't be saved from within. He lost to Akainu in the admiral election, watched Absolute Justice take the helm, and walked away. He joined the Blackbeard Pirates, the ultimate rejection of everything Garp stood for. And when teacher and student finally meet again, the student freezes the teacher. The student became the consequence of the master's failure. Kuzan is what happens when Garp's ideology doesn't work. A good Marine who realizes the system is unsalvageable, and having no Garp-like faith to cling to, joins the darkness instead. Every high-ranking Marine drapes their coat over their shoulders, rather than wearing it properly. Oda addressed this in SBS 61. The coats stay on because justice is written on the back, and as long as the feeling of justice is in their hearts, the coat will never fall. Garp is notably the only high-ranking Marine whose coat falls off after battle. His justice isn't stable. It wavers. It drops. He picks it up and puts it back on, but it never sits right. He's in the system but never fully clothed in it. A Marine who can't quite commit to wearing the uniform the way it's supposed to be worn. Some or a lot of people may argue that Garp is a coward. He had the power to challenge the Five Elders, to expose God Valley, to save Ace, to join Dragon, to tear the institution down from the top. He did none of it. He voiced his complaints, he draped his coat improperly, he refused one promotion, and then he followed orders for 4 decades, while the system committed atrocity after atrocity. His My Justice is just regular injustice with better branding. He is the most dangerous kind of enabler, the good man who stays, because his presence allows the institution to claim legitimacy it doesn't deserve. The deepest cut isn't that Garp serves a corrupt system, it's that he's proud of the people who fight against it. He laughs when he hears about Luffy's exploits. He never truly hunted Dragon. He raised Ace with love despite knowing the boy was Roger's son. Garp's heart has always been on the side of the people who burn the system down. He just can't bring himself to light the match. This is what separates Garp from every other Marine. Akainu believes in the system. Sengoku compromises with it. Fujitora challenges it openly. But Garp mourns it. He serves an institution he knows is evil because the alternative, a world without any order at all, terrifies him more than his own guilt. He'd rather carry the weight of Ace's death than risk the chaos that would follow if a figure like him defected. And that's why Garp is Oda's masterpiece of contradiction. He's not a hero, and he's not a villain. He's a man who chose the coward's version of bravery, staying inside the burning building because someone has to hold the walls up, even as everyone he loves is screaming at him to get out. Every person he raised became proof that the world needs to change. And Garp's tragedy is that he agrees with all of them. He just decided a long time ago that it wouldn't be him who changed it.